waits, and Johnson scores!
Masaba's in the middle. Wednesday here could seal it. Gassman finds Masaba.
It's now Bannon with a great ball in. Here's an opportunity. Palmer scores! Liam Palmer has scored for Sheffield Wednesday.
Hello and welcome all to the Wednesday Till I Die podcast. I am Matt Johnson, and you join us for a special episode with the host of The Prices Football, football finance expert, Kieran Maguire. Kieran, first off, how are you? You okay?
I'm okay, Matt. I mean, I started off work this morning at 7 a.m. on Radio Lancashire, dealing with Morecambe FC.
Yeah.
And of the 92 clubs, in order of the ones to be most worried about, I think you're one above them.
Yeah.
Which is not a good place to be for them or for you. So I appreciate that you as Owls are going through some tough times yourselves.
Yeah, it's really difficult at the minute. And obviously the last time that we spoke, it was, it's bad, but, there's a lot of steps to get through and it might not be there, for a couple of months. But actually, I think the one thing that myself and James have spoken about, and I know you've spoken about it yourself on your pod, it's just the speed at which it's happened at Sheffield Wednesday. The speed at which the House of Cards seems to have come tumbling down is just something that, as you said, you referenced the Morecambe situation as well. I know it's a slightly different situation and the complexities are very different. But it's just the speed at which it has kind of all fallen apart here, which is really, really worrying. So we'll touch on that to begin with in terms of the current state and I suppose the operational crisis really that surrounds the football club, we're a football club which is in full-blown crisis off the field. We also have on the field instability in terms of a manager, in terms of Danny Röhl is in sort of limbo. Players reportedly have revolted a little bit, and we've seen people leaving the club in the past week with Josh Windass and Michael Smith. How? I suppose it doesn't paint a great picture, Kieran. Sorry. I suppose the question is, this player unrest, the managerial and coaching stuff. How often do you see this coincide with ownership turmoil? Like, are the two mutually exclusive? Because it does feel at the moment that it is just, we've all known about the ownership and we did last time that we spoke, but it does feel at the moment that it is just, that is the next stage in kind of what happens really.
Well, I think, Matt, that we all have a moan about work. Yeah, remember football players, we see them for what they are on the pitch, but they see themselves as employees. And we'll have a bitch about the boss, we'll have a bitch, we'll moan about this, that, and the other. But there's always an assumption that you're going to get paid at the end of the month. And you might think you're not paid enough, and you might not like the fact that he or she, two desks down, is being paid more than you for what you think is exactly the same job. But you've still got sort of, hey, okay, money comes in on the 29th, standing orders and direct debits go out on the 1st, and then I'm going to try to struggle through to the end of the month. That's not been happening at Wednesday. I think there's been a breakdown of confidence as far as staff members are concerned. That's both on the pitch staff and off the pitch staff. As a result of that, from my understanding, from sources within or close to Sheffield Wednesday, some of the players have been in contact with their union, the Professional Footballers Association, to find out exactly where they stand. And clearly, it looks as if two players have effectively served notice on the club. I think in the case of Josh Windass, the club was trying to extend his contract, but it looks like they were in breach, and therefore that has given him the option to consider alternatives, and that doesn't mean that he doesn't care. I mean, I read his sort of departure note on social media, and he seems very, very grounded and very grateful for his time here. And he as he says, I'll always be an L. I've been here a significant part of my career, but he's got a family, He's got bills to pay, and therefore he's taken the steps that he has done. With regards to some of the allegations of other outstanding payments, could those have contributed to where we are in terms of the fee restrictions and the embargo? Well, broadly, I would imagine so. There are sort of two issues in the sense that the embargo appears to be linked to presumably payments for loan players. And look, yeah, I'm a Brighton fan. So we know that could involve Brighton Hove Albion. Why are the EFL taking such a strict approach? The reason why that is because the EFL and the Premier League and UEFA and FIFA, they're all operating in a house of cards. If you take a look at the Premier League, for example, there's £3.6 billion of unpaid transfer fees. If a few, you need one or two clubs to say, I owe 50 million here, 20 million there, and I'm not going to pay it for whatever reason, and the club that was due to receive that said, hold on, that was going to pay our wages for the next 3 months, the whole of football could unravel. So that's why we're seeing the authorities take such a harsh approach. And then you've got the fee restriction, which is to do with the late payment of wages. It's due to the fact that Dejan Chansiri has not honoured his word in terms of effectively guaranteeing to pay the wages and put funds into an account where the EFL can say, yeah, okay, we can see that money's in the account, we can rest. From a fan's point of view, there could be anger directed towards the EFL, but ultimately they're an administrative body, and Sheffield Wednesday is a private company, and there's only so much that you can do for an administrative body in terms of controlling that company.
Question, I suppose, as a follow-up for that, Kieran, is with obviously the managerial situation as it is, and obviously there's very limited information that's out there about that, aside from Danny Röhl refusing to come back to pre-season training, or turning up late to pre-season training, not refusing to come back, turning up late to pre-season training by 2 weeks. And now we have 16, 17 senior players available. We know the sporting impact that is likely to have, but from a financial planning stage, at this stage at where the club sits, how does that impact the club's financial planning moving forward?
It's a mess. So anyway, I can use stronger language than that, but
you're welcome to, Kieran.
We're both from the teaching profession, and we both know that at times we'd rather use stronger words, both in and out of the classroom. But I will try to keep it. How can you plan for a business over the course of the next 10 months where you're going to need a squad of 25 players when you've only got 16 or 17? You've got an embargo when it comes to recruiting players. You've got fee restrictions added on to that, which restrict the number of players that you can sign anyway. And there is also uncertainty. We are recording this on the 21st of July. Okay, it's payday in a week and a half.
Yeah.
And if I was a player, I would be concerned. If I was a member of staff of Sheffield Wednesday Football Club Limited, I would be concerned, because that's the reason why we all work. Okay, yeah. I know. As fans, we say, "Oh, I'd wear the shirt for nothing." No, you wouldn't. If you're that good, if you are, the top 0.1% of the top 0.1%, that you're good enough to play for Sheffield Wednesday or any other club in the Championship, you're an elite athlete, and you should be rewarded as such. So I think there's a lot of uncertainty. It is a mess. There's a poor communication, zero communication coming out of the club itself. I've seen various names put forward as potential bidders, without giving any details away. I've been working with, for want of a better phrase, a consortium, i.e. some wealthy individuals who are looking to buy a football club, and we went through a long list of clubs. Not big enough to buy Premier League club, not probably big enough to buy a club that's just been relegated from the Premier League because they've got the parachute payments. But they're looking at perhaps League One, bottom half of the Championship. And the discussion around Sheffield Wednesday was there's too many unknowns. And there was a belief, and I just said, look, I'll give you the numbers. I won't get involved in what you might call the qualitative discussion. And the comments were, we just don't think that we can negotiate with Chancery because the noises that we're getting is that he changes his minds every 5 minutes. First of all, he's going to save the club, then he's going to go to his mates. We want to buy a football club. We want to make progress, and you can't make progress with somebody who's constantly flip-flopping in terms of their authenticity and their sincerity when it comes to the sale of the club. So that affects one group, and let's be honest, this group, whether they buy Sheffield Wednesday or Club X or Club Y, to the investors, it's a football club. I think there are some other people interested in Sheffield Wednesday who, if you cut them in half, they've got owls inside of them. And therefore for them it's an emotional investment, and therefore perhaps they're more willing to stay on and to try to make progress. But we all know the journalists that deal with Wednesday, they're not getting many positive vibes, and often it's a case of one step forward followed by one step back.
So you mentioned the transfer fee embargo that we still sit under, which is, I believe it's regulation 52.2.3.
Living the dream.
In all of the EFL jargon, and that is set to remain in place until, I think, is it January 2027 or 2026? Although the HMRC and wage-related embargoes have been lifted. Question for you here is, Kieran, can clubs practically operate under such multi-window restrictions, and what alternatives do they have typically to pursue under these type of restrictions?
You can sign players, but I think broadly you've got to operate as if you're a League Two club, in the sense that you can't pay fees. You're looking for bargain bucket options. You're phoning a friend or phoning a friend of a friend. If I was a Premier League club looking to loan a player to a Championship club this season, and lots of them are, would Sheffield Wednesday be top of my list? I suspect not, because they have a responsibility. They have a professional responsibility towards the young men that they're sending out on loan, that they're operating in the right environment, that they are going to be paid, and also from that Premier League club's point of view, they want to get paid. It is a business.
We faced obviously 3 embargoes, Kieran, over this window, which is, English football record-breaking season, as it already is for Sheffield Wednesday in the embargo front. This is for unpaid transfer fees. How does that further constrict your ability to build a squad? Like you've just touched on it there with the like a club contacting another club. Can I just add another little thing into the mix here, which is the discussion surrounding a manager? Because obviously last year we were in, I would argue, benefit and receipt of having Danny Röhl in place as a manager at Sheffield Wednesday, with Shay Charles, who was inarguably our player of the season last year. So even with emergency free transfers or youth options, you just mentioned League Two kind of caliber players. What do you think the current upside is? I know we've just talked about the downside there from the fee paying side of things, but what do you think the actual current upside is to sending a player on loan to Sheffield Wednesday with all of that we've just discussed?
Well, I don't necessarily mean League Two caliber players, but you are probably, if you take a look at, and I've got every single of the 92 club finances in front of me, 14 of clubs in League Two last season didn't sign a player for a fee. And they all survived. But it is a case of survival But remember, they are competing against 13 other clubs that didn't sign a player for a fee as well. Chances are in the Championship that's not going to be the case.
Yeah.
So from a if I'm a, we now have in the Premier League loan managers, and what are they looking for? They're looking for exposure on the pitch at a higher level for the people under their control. They're looking to get feedback from the club to which they went to. Well, okay, who's going to provide that feedback? Because is Danny Roll going to be there in 2 weeks' time?
Yeah.
I don't know. You don't know. Dejon Chanshiri certainly doesn't know. Are they going to get paid? If it's a half decent player, then the chances are you've got 6 or 7 other suitors, and that's what they are. They are the clubs, and it comes down. I always say to people when you're recruiting, and that works both ways. And what is the Premier League club doing? It's recruiting Sheffield Wednesday potentially to look after their player. Do I like you? Do I trust you? Can you do the job? Okay, well, which of those 3 do you think Dejon, not saying Sheffield Wednesday, I'm saying Dejon Chanshiri's Sheffield Wednesday, how many of those 3 are being ticked at present, given the state that the club is in?
Yeah, and I think all fair questions there. So in the previous section, obviously, we touched on kind of like the embargoes and a little bit about the clubs, but we're going to come on to a little bit of kind of what appears to be, from a fan perspective, some asset stripping in a second. But obviously, Chanshiri has cleared some of the HMRC and wage debts, but still owes around, I think, roughly 4 million to various parties, 2.2 million to HMRC for June and July. How much does this hinder any potential sale or future investment?
Okay, I don't think it's a hurdle.
Okay.
All that will happen if let's say, Matt, that I'm buying your house from you.
Yep.
And we've agreed that I'm going to pay you 200 grand, and then I have a look around and say, you've got a bit of dry rot there, and look, the bath's not, that's not working, that's not working. So what do? I knock it off the price. So if I am a club, if I am a person or a consortium that is looking to buy Sheffield Wednesday Football Club, and we think that the normal price is, let's say, 45 million, but we've got to go and pay HMRC, we've got to go and pay this club, that club, and that club 4 million. You say, okay, tell you what, Dejon, we'll give you 41. First thing we're going to do, day number 1, we're going to settle those debts. And it's exactly the same as us giving you 45 million and you say that the debts will be settled before the contract goes through. So it will simply have an impact upon the net amount. Well, no impact upon the net amount that Chanshiri receives. It will have an impact upon the gross amount. If in the interim period he can free up those debts, then can we make any minor progress with regards to the EFL website that I'm looking at present, and you're sharing an appearance there with Hull City.
Yeah. Who, ironically, Kieran, we owe money to, for Malik Wilkes, who is no longer a Sheffield Wednesday player. So, yeah, the Hull City can join the back of the queue for as far as I'm concerned, along with everybody else we owe money to. But obviously, in the past 2 weeks, we've seen us sell first-team assets like Jedi Gassama, Anthony Masaba, Josh Windass, to pay day-to-day bills. And it's very indicative of a financial crisis or a funds crisis, or to put it more bluntly, a fire sale.
Yes.
Does that have any impact on a potential purchase of a football club? Like, as an investor going in, you have seen a lot of the assets being, for want of a better word, stripped on the playing side of the football club. Does that come into a costing factor for a club like Sheffield Wednesday, do you think?
Absolutely. So for people that don't know my background, many years ago, I was sort of what we call a day-to-day accountant. And I specialised in the insolvency industry, and my responsibility was to run businesses with a view to selling them. Now, if I was struggling to sell the business, and I've got a payroll at the end of the week or at the end of the month, I'd start selling bits and pieces because I had to, and I'd accept whatever prices that were offered to me. I mean, I can remember running a car exhaust company
Mhm.
up in Lancashire. And their, poor people, rigid here, their master plan was that they were going to have every single car exhaust that you could possibly sell.
Okay.
But the trouble is, the number of people that are actually coming in for a 1974 Triumph Spitfire 1.3L twin NAS was very, very few. So they had loads of. I went into the warehouse. Jesus Christ, there's a lot of exhaust. But nobody was buying them because they were so obscure. So, I sold a job lot which had a book value of X for 1/10 of X because I had a wage bill the following week, and the chances of selling those individual exhausts was close to zero. So that had an impact when I sold the company as a whole. It's exactly the same here for a prospective owner of Sheffield Wednesday. Part of the sale pitch is that you're acquiring a football club in a football city, and Sheffield is a football city. I know you don't want to talk about the other lot, but it's a genuine football city. You're talking about a football club which can proudly point to being in the Premier League, reaching cup finals, having a passionate fan base. All of these positives are pluses. And you're doing that and you're saying, and we're only 46 games away from the Premier League. And then you look at the squad and you go, I think we're going down this year. So, unless I, as the owner, come in, or prospective owner come in and say, right, I'm going to put in 15, 20 million pounds to plug that gap. If I'm having to do that, again, that's coming off the price that I'm willing to pay Chansiri. So every player that is sold as an undervalue has a negative impact upon the price that a prospective owner would be willing to pay, because if you sell three of your tyres on your car for £2 each, I'm coming in, well, it's going to cost me 120 quid to go and put in 3 new tyres. I'm going to offer you less.
Yeah, no, I understand. I think if we now just touch on a little bit to do with the takeover talks, and it's interesting to hear you talk about kind of like the Triumph Spitfire exhausts and bits and pieces like that, because that is effectively what we've been doing. We've been getting rid of, I suppose, any type of high-end exhaust that you could buy. We have sold off our best and prize assets. So as of last Friday, which at the time of recording was July, I think 18th, takeover talks, but including, and this is to date, John Textor, Tillman Fertitta, Guadiscioni, and a Florida-based consortium have collapsed due to an unclear financial liability on whatever front. Now, that may be funds from the prospective buyers, it may be Chansiri, we don't know. My question is, Kieran, what findings would investors need to feel comfortable buying a football club in this state?
Well, Sheffield Wednesday in its present form is what we refer to as a going concern. So therefore, any owner would want a list of assets that they are buying. And remember that doesn't at present include the stadium. It doesn't necessarily include your real estate assets. It will have a list of player registrations. Now, could it be that some more of those player registrations could be breached, in the sense that if the July wage packet is late, where does that leave players? So, has Chansiri been able to give undertakings and guarantees that this month's wage bill will be paid, and therefore there won't be any repeats of what we've seen in terms of Windass and Smith? I don't know. It's a simple answer. Clearly players have been sold, which has brought money in, which in theory, whilst it is, as you're absolutely right, Matt, to say that it's a fire sale, it is indicative of, well, they should have enough money to pay this month's wage bill. I was doing a sort of back of a fag packet calculation, but has the EFL said your sale proceeds from players, because you have outstanding amounts which are due for last year's transfers inwards and loans inwards, we're going to take that money and we're going to give that to Hull City, Brighton Hove Albion, whoever it's going to be, and that they are in a position to do that. So could we therefore be back to square one? So you're acquiring the assets. One would hope that Chansiri has appointed some professional people to put together a list of all of the assets, and you're acquiring the outstanding liabilities.
Go, Kieran. Go. Go.
What does he owe? How much does he owe? When is it due for repayment?
Hmm.
Does some of what is owed, is it owed to him? Yeah, because looking at his owner loans, those are substantial. Is he willing to write all of those off? Yeah, I think he should. And we have seen other owners effectively do that when they've walked away from clubs. None of us know the extent. If he's saying, well, I want 10 million of my loan paid, and if you get promoted to the Premier League in the next 5 years, I want X percent of your first 3 years of Premier League revenue. We don't know the small print. And I suspect some of the sticking points have been perhaps some of what you might call some of the moonshot things that he's potentially wanted embedded into contracts. And prospective owners have said, we just don't feel comfortable with that, because we want certainty from our point of view. And there's too many unknowns in the deal. Going back to the analogies, would you buy a house if you weren't certain whether it was going to have planning permission to put in your new bathroom? Would you buy a car if it's only got a week's worth of MOT left? The chances are probably not.
Yeah. Can I just ask, because you mentioned about the EFL potentially holding some of that money back to not necessarily go back to the club, but actually go to the clubs who are owed fees by Sheffield Wednesday. Can I also check, does that happen with the TV money also? So with the Sky money as well? Could the EFL do that with the Sky money, potentially hold it back and pay off some of those outstanding debts with that money that is presumably going to land into the club's bank account in theory at the end of August?
Yeah, I mean, from what I understand, and again, I might have misinterpreted this.
Yeah.
I've got a good relationship with the EFL. That the Premier League effectively gives money to the EFL every month, and the EFL distribute. Yeah, the Premier League doesn't want the administrative hassle of giving money to 72 clubs in a competition with which it has no control. So, therefore, could the EFL say, well, we're going to give this, say £500,000 a month? It's probably around about that, from the Premier League TV. We're going to give that to our member clubs in the Championship, but Sheffield Wednesday, you're on this embargo list, you're on this fee restriction list, you still owe X to these clubs, so therefore, we're initially going to run down that money until it's zero, and then you'll get your money. I think there's a fair chance that would happen.
Okay. And the last one on this, Kieran, and this is a difficult question. Last time that you were on, we spoke in theory about administration. Has that become a more realistic possibility over the last 5-6 weeks since we talked?
I don't think so. My view is that if I was contemplating putting Sheffield Wednesday into administration, I would have gone hard and early. I think that would have been the best case for the club. I suspect that Mr. Chansiri has a different approach. He still believes that he can turn the club round. He still believes that perhaps he can access funds which none of us are aware of, and therefore he's in a better position to make that decision. The club has sold players. It has brought in some money. If we have this conversation in 12 days' time, we will know by then whether or not the July wage packets are being paid. But I think I personally would have gone early. But I've got a different perspective to life than Dejan Chansiri.
I was just about to say, Kieran, you're also speaking from somebody with a sound financial background and somebody who understands the difficulties that financial situations can cause, which our current owner, I think, based off everything, my personal opinion, I don't think has recognised early enough. Now moving forward to regulatory and legal governance a little bit, because the independent football regulator is now going to be coming into power, hopefully in the upcoming months, how might this situation, especially where poor ownership threatens, or poor owners' decisions, ownership and their decisions threatens a club's viability, how may it be handled differently under stronger regulation in this way?
Yeah, I mean, the Football Governance Act, as it is now, has been given royal assent in the last couple of hours.
Yeah.
So it is now part of the legislative framework. Could it have rescued Sheffield Wednesday from what we've seen over the course of the last 2 or 3 months? The answer is simply no.
Okay.
Because the aim of the regulator is to try to be preventative. You cannot kick out owners who've already bought football clubs. You can make it more difficult for prospective owners who either don't have the cash that they claim to have, or don't have the source of cash that they claim to have. It could be from nefarious purposes. And this is something which has flown under the radar. Last week, the government put out its annual assessment of terrorism and money laundering.
Mm-hmm.
And if you read that document, and I wouldn't encourage people to read it, leave it for people with no personality or lives, such as myself, to do that. You will see that included in that document is the football industry. And without, I'm bigging myself up here, but I'm genuinely, I just happen to be in the wrong place at the right time a lot of times. A couple of years ago, I was asked to give a talk to the National Crime Agency, Interpol, and Europol on fraud in football, and I was able to give examples of the type of thing that was taking place. That there is a genuine concern that football is actually an industry which works very well for money laundering. Not terrorism issue, not as such. And the reason for this is that nobody knows the value of the assets. How much is your centre forward worth?
Yeah.
Or if you're buying, let's say you're buying a player from Bolivia or Colombia, and people are going to say, "Hold on, Maguire, South America, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. We know what you're up to." I'm just giving two countries as illustrations.
Yeah.
Is that player worth $2 million or $4 million or $6 million? And also the way that players are owned in South America in particular, there are ways of shifting money around and legitimizing spending. And the other issue, as far as football is concerned, is what we sometimes refer to as the pretendants.
Okay.
You go to a football match and you go, "Not many here," and then you go, "And the crowd today is 24,000." And you go,
"Yeah,
blimey O'Reilly, they've got gate receipts. You've got gate receipts. Where's 24,000?" And from a money laundering point of view, you overstate the attendance. The clubs are still losing money, so you don't pay any tax, and it washes that money through. So the regulator is dealing on behalf of other government agencies as much as the preservation of football, the aim of protecting football from another MK Dons, protecting football from another Cardiff City, in the sense of, the owners thinks that, red's a lucky colour. I tell you what, can you imagine what would happen if you got a new chairman who decided to play you in red and white stripes?
Yeah,
exactly.
It might be slightly more unpopular than the current owner, if I'm being honest.
Exactly right. Well, these are the types of sort of checks and balances that the regulator. I've had the privilege to speak to Lisa Nandy, who is the sports minister, the DCMS minister, and she says, "Look, we want it to be light touch. Ideally, we don't want the regulator to have much to do."
Yeah.
In exactly the same way. I might say to myself, "I haven't seen a policeman down our road for a while," and they get, but we've had nothing nicked in our road for a while. That's actually a good sign. So I don't think it would make a huge difference. It will stop, or it will make it much more difficult in future for what we can broadly describe as wrong-uns coming into the game, and it will also make it more difficult for people who are currently what I would describe as wrong-uns, trying to have matches taking place overseas, set up super leagues which are based on invitation as opposed to merit, and so on.
I suppose the next one is more a little bit of a look into the future before we get onto some potentially positive stuff in the future, is what penalties might still be forthcoming for Sheffield Wednesday, and could there be points deductions or further sanctions?
I think a points deduction will apply in one of two sets of circumstances. First of all, the club goes into administration. That'll be, I think it's an automatic 12-point deduction. And if the club subsequently comes out of administration and does not pay unsecured creditors, i.e. your local Joes and Josephines, doesn't pay them at least 25% of what they're owed, and it doesn't pay all of the football debts, then there's a further 15-point deduction. So harsh penalties, people might say, it affects the fans. Yes. Well, the aim is to, there is another club in Yorkshire, which many years ago, very conveniently, went into administration after it was mathematically impossible to stay up.
Yes.
And then it was, I think it was bought back from the administrators very, very quickly. And that was very convenient. It was bought back by, seemed to be the same, new boss, same as the old boss, that type of routine. And clubs didn't like that. So the rules are harsh, but it's to stop pre-pack arrangements. It's to stop the abuse of the insolvency laws, which themselves are imperfect, as is most legislation, but it's still potentially better than no legislation. So that's one set of circumstances. The other set of circumstances is if Sheffield Wednesday exceed the PSR loss limits. I think there's very little chance of that, because without being rude, you ain't been spending any money on players.
Spent absolutely naff all. Oh dear. Yeah. Well, that is, I'll be honest, Kieran, that is some form of comfort. I know that's a really dark and cynical view to take, but there has been a lot of discussion surrounding points deductions and further sanctions that can come. So again, as you were talking about, to obviously couple that with the administration talk from earlier and still not seeing that as not being done at this point in time, because if you were going to do it, you do it early. That is somewhat reassuring, I suppose, in that respect. Looking ahead then and thinking about potential and prospective new buyers, if a suitable buyer were to emerge, what early indicators should fans look for to believe in an ownership group or a model, or that a turnaround is genuine in this situation? Because we are in a hell of a hole at the minute.
I think that's quite challenging in the sense that it's a bit like going on a blind date.
Okay.
Have you ever been on a blind date?
No, I haven't.
No, I haven't either. But if you do, it's pretty tough.
Okay.
You're trying to work them out, and again, goes back to those factors which I say: do I like you? Do I trust you? I think those are, and given what's happened to Sheffield Wednesday over the course of the last couple of years, fans have lost trust in senior management at the club. And trust is one of those things which goes up in inches and comes down in yards, in my experience. And therefore, on the back of that, I think there will be initially a view. Well, you've got one big positive: your surname's not Chansiri. So I think most fans will probably give the benefit of the doubt, and then they'll be looking to see actions. Are the new owners engaging? Is there a fan advisory board? Are the owners holding a town hall meeting with the fan groups and saying, right, look, this is what we do. This is how much money we got to spend, because we've acquired a club which has been knackered financially. There's been no money invested in the stadium. There's been no money invested in the squad. We've only got so much to spend. We've got to do this in order to get a safety certificate. We've got to do this in terms of plugging the gaps in the squad, and therefore we're going for a couple of 33-year-olds because they know what to do, rather than having more of a gamble on a younger player who is coming in and is slightly sort of, this is quite overwhelming. So So those would be sort of the type of things that I would be looking for. But trust is very much a personal thing.
Yeah. And I think all absolutely fair points. I think lastly, just to finish on here, Kieran, and it was only 3 months ago, and we started on obviously this discussion about the speed of it falling down. 3-4 months ago, Sheffield Wednesday was a mid-table championship club. Given the scale of the debt that we know about to date, the operational instability, the regulatory constraints that are now around the football club, realistically, how long will it take before Sheffield Wednesday can hope to be a stable mid-table championship club again?
There's no reason why that can't be in 13 or 14 months. Now, I'll be honest, looking at from the outside, if you stay up this season, build a statue of the manager, build a statue of those players, build a statue of that new owner, because everything is stacked against you. So now there's got to be all for one for all. That siege mentality, and dropping down a division isn't the end of the world. Just look at what's happened at Birmingham City. Just look at how positive their fans are after they were relegated. They did have new owners come in. The culture of that club, the ambition of that club has turned around in 12 months. They can't wait for the start of this season. And in my view, I've got them down as a playoff contender because there's only 4 clubs in the championship this season with parachute payments. Yeah. So you then say, well, okay, who else has got big budgets? Birmingham is certainly one of them. So it could be this season is bad news. Yeah. Although if the owners come in September, October, and do have a decent budget, could you put together a transfer activity in January, which allows you to do the stabilisation things that we saw? Perhaps you go back to Newcastle United when they were acquired by PIF. That took place in October/November, and they went out into the January window and they signed the type of players which don't get the fans excited, but it was Trippier and Dan Burn. If you can get the league, the championship equivalent of a Trippier and a Dan Burn, players who aren't glamorous, but players who will never put in less than a 100% shift, players that know what to do when you've got a slightly fluky 2-1 victory or 2-1 lead, and it's the 86th minute, and you're down to 10 men. Those are the players that you look to because they've got the experience. So that you could potentially on that basis survive, and that's what this season is all about: survival, and then do a Birmingham City to say, right, we've now effectively, because we've not lost money, we can put money into the club in the summer of 26, and the total environment, the culture, the enthusiasm, looking forward to the fixture lists coming out, not looking at that particular page on the EFL website. All of that will change because football's like that. Football's about dreams.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is a really positive note to finish on, Kieran. Can I please just ask, Kieran, just for those who have, by some miracle, haven't been exposed to your wonderful meandering through all of the finances surrounding football, where people can find you and where people can listen to you for more regular updates, because Sheffield Wednesday is content gold at the minute for somebody like yourself.
I feel really bad because I've become the Grim Reaper of the football business. I do a podcast 2 or 3 times a week with a comedian and writer, Kevin Day, and it's called The Price of Football. And we look at all clubs at all levels. We deliberately have taken a stance because something we believe as legacy fans, every fan's love for their club is equal. And therefore, we have a responsibility to cover as many stories as possible at all levels. So it's called The Price of Football. It goes out twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week. And Kevin's an absolute delight to work with. We have some pretty decent guests on the show, not glamorous footballers, but we'll have Trevor Birch from the EFL. He's been on, head of Scottish football, head of the PFA. We've got a championship owner coming on in a couple of weeks. not from Sheffield.
I was just about to say, please tell me that's breaking news, Kieran.
That would have been an exclusive. One exclusive too many. It's bafflingly popular. With 15 million plus downloads, because we try to be as objective and to set aside the tribalism of football, because there are things which we all hold together. And even though you hate Sheffield United, I'm a Brighton fan, he's a Palace fan. We say, we hate each other's clubs, but you can't have a rivalry without rivals.
Yeah, agreed. I think if I can just pass on, Kieran, it's for anybody who is listening and hasn't listened to it, it's a fantastic listen. And I know, Kieran, you are probably too humble to say so. You make football finance fun, which is a really, really difficult skill. And you also make it really easy to actually understand the nuances and the intricacies that somebody like myself isn't going to. So yeah, if I can encourage anybody who hasn't listened to it already, please go and give it a listen. Kieran, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I really hope in the future I can have you back on where we can talk about all the wonderful things surrounding Sheffield Wednesday and football finance, and actually things that you'd like to see a current owner who's doing brilliantly with a football club also do. Because that might get rid of that Grim Reaper tag.
I hope so. Yes, and we'll come up and we'll do a live show in Sheffield. We did one in Rotherham recently, where we go around a few grounds during the course of the season, but it tends to be a club where somebody's got a smile on their face, and that would be great if that was the case of Sheffield Wednesday.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. Thank you so much, Kieran. Thank you so much to everybody for joining us for this. Please catch us on the debate show on Wednesday and the main show on Sunday evening. Take care, all. Thank you very much for listening.